Being a pre-med student is notoriously difficult. Studying for long hours, trying to be involved with many extracurriculars, and working out a clear path to your dream career can be overwhelming at times. Add in the challenge of being a first-generation college student, and completing the pre-med track can feel nearly impossible at times. This is a feeling that is shared by many pre-med first-generation students and has been documented through various studies. Researchers have found that medical students who are first generation have less access to resources that can support their career paths. Some of these challenges were examined in the Brosnan et al. Study through social, economic, and cultural capital. Social capital describes who is in your network. First generation students are less likely to have parents who are doctors because their parents didn't go to college, and having a doctor in the family was seen as a definite advantage in terms of fitting in at medical school and also in terms of gaining access to clinical experiences as a medical student. Students who lack this resource tend to feel isolated from their peers. Economic capital describes how much income or wealth you have. First-generation students are more likely to have to work through school, meaning that there's less time for academics or extracurriculars that make them stand out to medical schools. Finally, cultural capital describes the knowledge and skills that are applied to different social contexts. Many students in the Brosnan paper talked about negotiating a dual identity, or the feeling of not quite belonging to either world. I have experienced many of these feelings myself along my path. In high school, I was able to shadow a trauma doctor. I happened to meet him at a pre-med conference that was next to my high school. It was an extensive process of filling out paperwork and consent forms, but I eventually was able to shadow him for the entirety of a 12-hour shift. This was an incredible experience, but it has been much more difficult to find similar opportunities in college. I sometimes feel that experience happened just out of luck. Since then, I look around at my pre-med peers and I often feel behind or out of place. After realizing how confused and isolated I felt, I began to wonder if other lead students felt the same way. I spoke with Erin about the challenges that pre-med lead students face, and she touched on many of the same findings. She talked about the difficulty that students have coming to college and getting started on the pre-med track.
And so, I think the level of preparation of our students, is, they're always coming in without the same level of kind of, often, right, the same level of experience and knowledge, right?
She also mentioned the lack of accommodations with SEU's classes that puts lead students at a disadvantage.
I think, I mean, with any of these natural science and engineering, sequences, I mean, the intensity of that, right? And, having to take the lectures and the labs and all the units that are involved with that, the very tight sequencing, right? It's Chem 11, Chem 12, Chem 13, only offered each quarter. If you don't do well in Chem 11, you're out of luck for the entire year, right?
Speaking with Erin showed me the immense amount of pressure that first-generation students place on ourselves. I also spoke with Dr. Clark, and he highlighted the lack of a pre-med program at SEU in general. He also described the importance of supporting lead students as soon as they voice an interest in the pre-med path.
If it starts, then you need to begin to develop that track so that whoever writes your letters can answer these questions.
Dr. Clark also talked about how we don't know much about what happens to pre-med lead students after they graduate.
I've been teaching lead for a couple of years and I don't see the students anymore. I don't know if we keep track of that. That's something we should be doing. All those students in lead who decide they're pre-med, we should be asking what happened to them.
Based on these interviews, the feelings of confusion and lack of support can lead to self-doubt. These feelings are echoed in the Southgate paper. These feelings of inadequacy are more than individual self-perception. They point to a collective characteristic of first-generation medical students, a shared understanding that certain groups are not really entitled to aspire to medicine, even if they have demonstrated significant academic achievement and life accomplishments. After all of this research, it was clear to me that there needs to be a resource that provides students with the opportunities and the support that they're asking for. After coming to SEU, I joined the EMS program, and it's currently shaping my path to medical school. I love talking about my experience on the squad, and I love sharing it with others. My vision for the future of this resource is to create a community of students and alumni that can share their experiences and advice with students that are just learning to navigate their path. My hope for this resource is that it will begin to address some of the experiences that first-generation pre-med students face.